Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another one of my FutureFight Vanguard videos. So we are continuing on our path with the G-BT12, cranking out all the G-BT12 videos, and today we are going to be talking about the Shiranui Domination deck. Quick thing before we get into that, if you guys haven't checked out one of my most recent videos about the Wasteland Cash Tournament, make sure you go check that out. I want to make that tournament as big as possible, get a lot of competition brewing, and get some good spirit going, and get somebody and get a few people some cash money that prove that they have the skills to take themselves to the top. So yeah, with that being said, go check out that video if you haven't already. And if you're here for this video, this Shiranui video, let's get started on that. So as usual, going right into the G zone, we're gonna unflip all of our cards in the G zone. This deck's actually pretty fun to play. My build might be surprising to some people, but it does work out very well in my opinion. It gets the job done very well, in my opinion, again. But yeah, let's start off with the grade 3s. So first we're starting off with 4 Shiranui Oboro. We have gone over this card in my previous Domination decks, but if you haven't been there along with me for the ride, if you are a new subscriber or you are a new video watcher, we're going to go over every single card for you, so no problem with that. But Shiranui Oboro has 2 abilities. The first one is a Vanguard only skill. At the beginning of your ride phase, you may choose a card from your opponent's drop zone, and if you do, your opponent chooses a circle to call it to, the rearguard circle, and at the end of the battle, they retire that unit. So you would choose a unit that you want to make them call to the board that you intend on dominating, basically. And at the end of the battle, at the end of the turn, they get to retire it. So that they don't get advantage off of it still being there, if that makes sense. So you call it for your turn, and then when your turn's over, boom, it dies. The only thing to be careful of doing this against is decks that can use the cards on their field by G-Guarding, or by G-Guarding, sorry. Decks like, I think, Murakumo, Bermuda, stuff like that. Like, things that you're actually increasing their vitality, so to speak, by bringing their unit back to the field. Because I know when someone's playing me with Shiranui, like whenever they bring back one of my units, I just make sure to bounce that unit if I'm playing Bermuda. So yeah, just definitely keep in mind what your matchup is, and when you're using the skill, when you're not using the skill, what purpose you're doing it for, and why it will be effective against your opponent and not detrimental to you winning the game. The second ability is a Domination skill that is on the Vanguard circle that says when your G unit strides, choose one of your opponent's rear guards, dominate it as stand. It gets 4,000 power, and then you can choose one of your opponent's units to attack with it. And you can also pay the cost to use its abilities as well if it has an on-attack ability that you meet the requirements to use. So Domination's pretty cool. Domination, for those of you who don't know, is the mechanic of Nubatama, the newer mechanic that allows you to basically take control of your opponent's rear guards, and in some cases, as of this set, the Vanguard, so that you can attack into your opponent's units and kind of make their own units. You kind of punish them for playing units in the way that you make their units attack themselves, so your opponent has to be really careful what they play. They can't give you like a card that's too powerful for you to use against them, like Morfessa and Shadow Paladin and things like that. Then for our backup grade 3 that we really never want to ride, but he's basically like, we run him for the rearguard option because we always want to ride our main Shiranui, but he is our backup grade 3. So he is Morishige. So what Morishige does is it has a Generation Break 1 ability that's on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, but like I said, you mostly want to just play it on the Rearguard Circle. Your opponent, you will choose one of your Rearguards and rest it, and then your opponent will choose one of their Rearguards. It will get 3,000 power, and if they do, then this unit gets 10,000 power. So questions on this card. If you rest a rear guard, does your opponent have to choose one of their rear guards and give it 3k? Yes, they have to do it. The only way that this skill would not go off is if they don't have any rear guards at all, or if the unit that they would have to give 3k to, or they would have to choose, has resist. So if their whole board has resist, or they have no rear guards, then you don't get the skill. However, if they do have even one unit that they're able to target, you do get the skill. So beware of that. I know a lot of people ask me questions on that. But yeah, it's basically just a 21k beater on the rear guard circle. Not much to say about that. And then we have, moving on to the grade 2s, we have 3 Shiba Kusari, which is our 10k vanilla, or one of our 10k vanillas in Nubatama. You can choose any 10k vanilla you want. There's not really a specific reason for using this one, except for it being a 10k vanilla and helping stop the rush decks, because your opponent, sometimes will try to rush you in this meta with stuff like Battle Sisters and stuff like that roaming around. So you definitely want to stay safe out here in the streets, so to speak, and then run some 10k vanillas. They just hold really good spots in the deck. So yeah, we run 3 10k vanillas. We run 3 Stealth Dragon Genkai. What Genkai does is it has a Generation Break 1 ability that says Counter Blast 1 and Soul Blast 1 when a dominated unit attacks during your turn. If you have a Shiranui Vanguard, you can draw a card, and then this unit gets plus 2,000 power until the end of the turn. So every time you make your opponent's dominated unit attack something, you can just plus off of it by using Genkai. You get to draw cards, use your soul. You get a ton of soul in this deck, so soul is not really a problem. Counter Blast is also not really a problem, because you have cards like this crit trigger that fixes your soul and your counter and blast at the same time. So just one of these crit trigger skills like fuels a Genkai, basically. So you never have to worry about both counter blast or soul blast. You have ready access to all of them. Then we have 3 Stealth Dragon Fooride. This card honestly almost got a 4-0 spot in this deck in my opinion, but honestly the space is really tight and I didn't want to run 2 of the new card, the new Tamahagane. So we did cut Fooride down to 3. So what Fooride does is it has 2 abilities. The first one is Generation Break 1, Soul Blast 1 during the main phase. Choose a card from your opponent's drop zone. Your opponent calls that card to an open rearguard circle, and at the end of the turn retires that unit. So Fooride's skill is just like the Shiranui Oboro skill, except that it makes your opponent call it to an open rearguard circle, so your opponent cannot choose to call over a unit that they already have. They have to call to an open rearguard circle, which is infinitely better because on turns where you're going to Mugen Lord, you want to have you want to force your opponent to have those multi units on the field so that you can make them multi-attack your opponent's Vanguard. Its second ability goes right alongside with that and pretty much says Generation Break 1 when another unit attacks during your turn. If you have a Vanguard with Shiranui in its name, this unit gets 2,000 power. So what ends up happening is when you make your opponent attack multiple times with Domination, every time something's attacking that's not itself, it will get 2,000 power. So when you end up doing like 5 or 6 attacks a turn, it will be getting like 12,000, like 10,000. So it's a very good boost. Then we have 2 of the new card from G-BT12, Stealth Beast Tamahagane Metsu. So what Tamahagane Metsu does is it has 2 abilities. One is when it's placed on the Vanguard or Rearguard circle, bind up to 1 card from the top of your deck face down. Only the owner of the face down cards may look at them. So when you bind a card from the top of your deck, your opponent cannot look at it, only you can. And so then you know what goes on with the second part of the ability, which is Generation Break 1 on the rearguard circle. When a dominated unit attacks during your turn, you can counter boss 1, and then you can choose a face down card from your bind zone and put it into your hand, and if you do, this unit gets plus 10,000 power. So it's very good because you can kind of bind multiple cards between Tamahagane Metsu and Meimo Danuki. Yeah, these weird names. But you can bind cards with their on-play skills, and then you can actually look at the face-down bind cards that you have, and your opponent won't know what they are, and then you can just add them to your hand. So you can kind of play mind games with your opponent, add crucial pieces that you need. If you bind a PG, that's great. You can just get it off of Metsu. Like, it's very awesome card, but we only run 2 because I don't want to bind too many cards from my deck. because eventually we'll deck out. So I decided to just cut this down to 2. Then we have 4 Strife Otter, pretty self-explanatory. This is a stride deck. We want to be able to stride as much as possible with 1 card from our hand. And then also this card can search out our Shiranui by revealing a grade 3 and then discarding a card. So basically if we have more Shige in our hand and we have a Strife Otter in our hand, grade 1 Strife Otter, we can just play this down and search our Shiranui and then discard a card and be fine. Then for our PG, we run 4 Stealth Dragon Utsuroi. So what Utsuroi does is it has Sentinel, the Sentinel ability, meaning that you can't run more than 4 Sentinels in your deck, whether that be Perfect Guards or Quintet Walls. The second ability is a regular PG skill that says when this card is placed on guard circle from hand, you can discard a card from your hand. If you do, choose one of your units that's being attacked, and it cannot be hit until the end of the battle. This unit can PG rearguard, so that is important to keep in mind. And then its drop zone ability, which is its final ability, is choose one other Utsuroi from your drop zone and put it on the bottom of the deck. When a dominated unit attack hits a Vanguard, then you can return this card to your hand. So basically if you have 2 PGs in your drop zone and a dominated unit hits your opponent's Vanguard, then you can put 1 PG from your drop zone to your hand and the other PG in your drop zone to the bottom of the deck. So very, very good. It's like Ezra's, and Ezra's-like cards are always good in my opinion. Moving on in the grade 1 lineup, we have 3 Stealth Dragon Sezui. So what Sezui does is pretty basic. Generation Break 1 on the rearguard circle. When a dominated unit attacks during your turn, this unit gets plus 3,000 power. So this unit can either become an attacker, become a really big booster, or just be an overall good beater for your opponent to have to drop cards to defend against. It can get really, really big depending on how many dominated units you do in a turn. Like for example, if my opponent has a full board and I Mugen Lord them, make their full board attack them, Sezui will get plus 15k, making it 22k by itself, or a 22k booster to boost with. So very, very good. Then we run 2 Stealth Dragon Genkai. This is another one of those cards in the deck that pretty much refunds costs like Genkai or Tamahagane, Metsu. Like, it just helps you manage your soul and your counter charges or your counter blasts. So when a dominated unit attacks during your turn, until the end of the turn, this unit gets a skill. So basically, all you have to do is dominate one of your opponent's units while this card is already on the board, and then it will get the skill to, at the end of the turn, put itself into the soul and countercharge 1. So it's giving you a soul and it's giving you a counterblast back so that you can use. So it's a very, very good card. I decided to run 2 because I really like this card. So I wanted to fit it in as a 2 of space, but I also wanted to leave 2 more spots for 1 of grade 1s in my deck because they also have their time to shine. So with that being said, let's get into those. So like I was talking about before with Tamahagane Metsu, this is basically the grade 1 version of it that just came out in G-BT12. It is called Stealth Beast Meimo Dang Nuki. So what it does is when it's placed on Vanguard or rearguard circle, we can bind up to 2 cards from the top of our deck face down. Only we can look at them. And then when a dominated unit attacks during our turn, if we're Generation Break 1, we can choose a face down card from our bind zone, put it into the soul, and then if we do, this unit gets plus 5,000 power. So a lot of times I'll use Mei just to use extra Tamahagane Metsu skills off of it, if that makes sense. Like, I won't really use Mei because I don't ever really need soul. I have a lot of good ways to get soul in this deck. So unless I'm running out of soul, I don't ever really use it for soul. It's not really required. So yeah, I don't use it for that really, but I only use it for like the first skill. Then we run 1 Stealth Dragon Tenrei. Now you can do one of 2 things with this card that I really like doing. So what this card does is it has a continuous ability on the rearguard circle that says Generation Break 1 during your turn. Your Vanguard with Shiranui in its name gets all of your opponent's Vanguard card name, races, clans, and nations. So what that means is that when you play it, like, you can just like say play it behind the Vanguard. So play it behind the Vanguard whenever you dominate one of your opponent's units. If it requires that you have like a Neo Nectar Heart card, or sorry, a Neo Nectar Vanguard, or like an Asha Vanguard, or Chrono Jet Vanguard or some Gear Chronicle Vanguard, something like that. It allows you to use your opponent's skills like that because you gain all of the things that they have that let you use their abilities. So Tenrei is really good in that respect. And then also when an attack hits a Vanguard during the battle that this unit was participating in, which means it attacked or boosted, you can put this unit into your soul and then your opponent has to discard one from their hand. So yet another way to fuel soul if we deem worthy or necessary of using the skill. But it also gets us those Vanguard requirements so that we can attack into our opponent consistently and use the skills and punish our opponent for playing strong units on the board. Then for our starter, we run one Stealth Dragon Madoi. Madoi has two abilities. The first one is Forerunner, which means that it can move itself back when it's ridden upon by a grade 1. Most starters in the game have this ability, so that's, you know, that bread and butter right there. And then the second ability is a Generation Break 1 skill that says when a dominated unit attacks during your turn, you can put this card into the soul, draw a card, and choose any rear guard, and it gets plus 3k. So the most common use that I do with this starter is on my first stride turn. When I dominate something with Shiranui Oboro, I'll also do Madoi at the same time and give 3k to that unit because I'm usually going into Mugen Timbu and I usually intend to retire it anyways. So I want to make it as big as possible for both swings that dominated rearguard is going to make, and then I can draw a card off of it, fuels my soul, and then that unit will get retired by Mugen Timbu at the end, so it's not a big consequence, not like you're leaving it there for them, for your opponent. So going into the triggers, we have 8 crit, 4 draw, 4 heal. The specialty crits that we run are Stealth Dragon Noroi and Toro Sada. So Stealth Dragon Noroi, what this card does is it's our Shiranui crit that when our Vanguard attacks, if we have a grade 3 or greater with Shiranui in its name, which we should always have because Strides gain the name of our heart, and our heart should always be Shiranui because we want to ride Shiranui guaranteed in this deck. So should always be Shiranui, grade 3 or greater, and then if you do, you draw a card, choose one of your Vanguards, and it gives plus 5,000 power. So this card is yet another card that fuels our soul in this deck. Can also get your Vanguard really big if you know that your opponent doesn't have a PG and you want to kind of like goad them into no guarding an attack because it would be too big for them to guard naturally. So yeah, there's a lot of uses with Noroi. It's a very good card. You can also play this card to the field, target it with Morishige to rest it, knowing that you're just going to shove it to the soul anyways and get rid of it. So it becomes very useful for that. Same thing with Toro Sada. So Toro Sada just has the axe skill that's pretty simple. Just says put into the soul and countercharge 1. So it seems like a very simple skill, but honestly this card is so amazing. Like, it can refund so many of your costs just by doing one of them, let alone 2. So it becomes a very good card that you're able to just rely on for countercharging and fueling your soul. Then we have 4 of the draw trigger that's a Margol clone in New Batama called Jiro Kiichi. So basically this is yet another way to fuel our soul, so that's why I was telling you guys we don't really ever need soul in this deck. So when it comes to Mei, like, you don't really have to use Meimo for soul, so that's why I don't use it for that. And then so what this card does is you shove a card, or you shove this card into your soul, and then you choose one of your units and it gets plus 3,000 power. See, I think this is actually stated wrong on area, like on the area effect. I believe that this draw trigger says choose any unit and give it 3,000 power, so you can even give one of your opponent's units 3k power, which makes this draw trigger like infinitesimally useful. Infinitely more useful to you guys using the ability. Then we have 4 heal trigger, which is Lucky Smile Zashiki Hime. This is our Fighters Collection heal trigger from the Fighters Collection. I was going to say our heal trigger from the Fighters Collection, but yeah, same thing. When this card is discarded from our hand to G-Guard with the bigger version of herself, which is the Jinx Stealth Fiend Zashiki Hime, then we can discard a grade 1 or less from our hand and draw a card, so it allows us to filter out our hand when we're using our heal to guard into this. So yeah, a little filtering, never hurt anybody. Deck thinning is deck winning, guys. But going into our strides, we have Inma Stealth Rogue Mugen Lord. This card is kind of like one of the main finishers of the deck, honestly. It is probably like the go-to finisher if your opponent's at 5 damage. Like, there's not many cards that are stronger than this card in terms of finishing the game, in my opinion, because the ability is just so strong, especially like the later and later you are in the game. But it has a Domination ability that says act during your main phase, counterboss 1, and choose a face down card from your G-Zone with the same name as this unit, turn it face up. So you counterboss 1 and flip a Mugen Lord, and then you choose up to the same number of any rear guards as the number of face up cards in your G-Zone, and they get plus 4,000 power, and then you dominate all of your opponent's chosen units as stand, and each of those units attacks your opponent's Vanguard. So if your opponent has 5 damage, they have 5 units, you're at least GB5, you use Mugen Lord, you can counterblast and flip, and then you can choose all 5 of your opponent's rear guards, and then literally just dominate all of them and make them one by one attack your opponent's Vanguard. So your opponent has to drop at least 5 cards to give that to you. Not to mention Shiranui's on stride skill, so that's 6 cards, and then you still have 3 attacks of your own, so that's at least 9 cards, and they're probably gonna have to PG Vanguard, so that's at least 10 cards, guys. Like, that's ridiculous. So unless your opponent has some kind of massive hand, I don't think that they will survive having a full board and being Mugen Lorded. Yeah, it's a really strong card. Then we have 2 Inma Stealth Dragon Mugen Timbu. We used to run this card at 4 in the G-BT11 build, but since then we've received some new cards, so we decided to change it up a little bit. Also, we don't ever really go into a second one of these, so we only run 2 now. The skill is Domination. During your main phase, you can counterboss 1 and flip a Mugen Timbu face up. If you do, choose one of your opponent's rear guards, and it gets plus 3,000 power for every card face up in the G-Zone. And then you dominate that unit as stand, and it attacks one of your opponent's units that you choose, and at the end of the battle, retire the dominated unit. So this unit is usually our first stride, allows you to get something important off of their board, mainly their starter most of the time, unless they have some other unit that you're afraid of or that you prefer to use the ability of. So it's a very good card to go into first stride. Like, not much lost by doing it. Like, it's just very safe. Then we have one of the new card, Evil Eye Hades Emperor Shiranui Moo Crow. So what Moo Crow does is it's actually our first domination ability in the game that allows you to dominate your opponent's Vanguard, and it is a very strong card. However, I did learn some new things about it while playing the matches. So apparently, if your opponent does not have a board, do not use this unit because then you won't be able to use their Vanguard to attack into anything, because they have to have at least 1 rear guard to attack into when you're using this ability. So it has a Generation Break 2 Domination ability that says Soul Blast 2 during your main phase and flip any card from your G-Zone face up, then choose a card and discard it, and then dominate all of your opponent's Vanguard as stand and they attack, and each of the Vanguards that you choose battles your opponent's rear guard. So you dominate your opponent's Vanguard, they attack rear guard. Also, since your opponent doesn't have a Vanguard during this time, your opponent cannot guard any of these attacks in any way. So when you dominate their Vanguard, you get their twin drive, and then you get the triple drive from Moo Crow. So it's very awesome. In this turn, you pretty much get quintuple drive in 2 different ways. So very good card for board wipe, and very good card for dominating your opponent's stuff. Then we have 1 GB8 Rikudo Stealth Dragon Dang, I was so close. Rokushikirakan. Yeah, so one of these. This card is absolutely broken in my opinion. If you make it a GBA, always use this card, because this card gets so much like free stuff out of your opponent, or it kills them. Like, it's a very hard card to get around. So Generation Break 8, when your opponent's unit is placed on the guard circle from hand, you may counterboss 1 or soul blast 1, and if you do, your opponent has to choose 2 cards from their hand and discard it. So what this does is that when your opponent's at like 5 damage in the late game, they can't take anything. Use Shiranui's Domination on stride skill to dominate something and make it attack the Vanguard. When they guard with something from their hand, then you soul blast 1 or counter blast 1, and then literally make them discard 2 cards from their hand. And then when your Vanguard attacks, they might try to PG, and you get turn priority as far as skills. So if they PG, you get to use Roku's skill, and then counter boss 1 or soul boss 1 and make them discard 2, and then they get to drop for their PG. So if they only have 3 cards in their hand, they cannot PG effectively. So it's very, very good. Then we have 1/6 Realm Stealth Dragon Getsuricon, or Getasuricon. Yeah, Getasuricon. I guess same thing. But this unit's pretty simplistic. We really never go into it. We run it as a 1-of spot because the spacing got pretty awkward with having Moo Crow there. So you could replace this with the second Moo Crow if you prefer. I really don't see a point for it, so I ran this card for the small case that we will use it sometime, which is this unit has an on-hit ability that says when your unit's attack hits a Vanguard, your opponent chooses a card from their hand and discards it. So getting cards in your opponent's hand, always good. If you have no unit to dominate somehow with Mugen Timbu, you can go into this for some more pressure. We run once a breeze in case our opponent tries to play the game 2 game with us, or the grade 2 game with us, sorry. And then we run 6 G-Guards, so this is kind of new. We run 6 G-Guards for options in this deck. So what I mean by that is you have many good G-Guardians in Nubatama, in my opinion. So we run 6 so that you can guard with them efficiently, and so that we can run 2 get Horicon and 2 of the different Abadashis, so that we have like a good selection of G-Guards to go into. Plus we have the space to run it in our G-Zone, so it's fine. So our first G-Guardian is the Shikihime. This is the card that our heel was referring to, like we talked about a little bit earlier in the video. When this unit's placed on the guard circle, you can choose a G-Guardian from your G-Zone, turn it face up, and then if you do, your opponent chooses a card from their hand and they may discard it. So your opponent chooses at this point if they want to discard a card to hand, or discard a card from hand, or keep the cards in their hand. And then if they keep the cards in their hand, then this unit gets plus 2,000 or 20,000 shield. So most of the time you go into this kind of baiting your opponent. Your opponent will most likely give you a card for it if it's an important attack. If it's not an important attack, you just no past an attack for usually a Vanguard attack for no reason at all. So this card can be very, very good when used in the right situations. Also, when you're making your opponent discard cards using this card, if your opponent does not check the heal during that turn and they are at 5 damage, discarding a card can actually be what kills them. Because when you go into your stride next turn and you go into, like, say, Mugen Lord or something like that, they won't, maybe they might be left like 1 card short of surviving your turn. Because that has happened to me before, just because my opponents discarded using this ability when they could have just let the attack be a no pass. So then we have 2 Horicon. Horicon is just really, really, really good or G-Guardian. It has the Domination ability and says when it's placed on guard circle, we counter boss 1 and soul boss 1. Then we choose one of our opponent's grade 1 rear guards in the back row, dominate it, and we move it to the guard circle, and is regarded as our guardian during the battle. So any important grade 1, there are a lot of important grade 1s in this metagame. If you see one, just G-Guard and snatch it straight up with Horicon, and it's off the field, and you also get some additional guard out of it, so it's very good. Then we have 2 of the different Abadashis. So what the first one does is if your opponent, if the number of cards in your opponent's hand is 6 or less, this card gets 5,000 shield. The second one says if the number of cards in your opponent's hand is less than yours, or sorry, if the number of cards in our hand is less than our opponent's, then this unit gets plus 5,000 shield. So they're both basic 31k guards, both used for different scenarios, and whatever scenario you're in, just make sure that you use the right one to get the 31k total shield out of it. So then we're cutting right into the game portion of our future fight, where we're loading up Shiranui 1. Looks like the first game we're playing against Kagero. We do ride and pass turn. Our opponent rides, and they're playing Overlord seemingly before the support getting updated to area. So all of my G-BT12 recordings are from before area updated. So we won't be running into any G-BT13 decks or anything like that. He does use Gatling Claw to get rid of our card, and then he uses his starter to make us get rid of another card, which is a pretty interesting tactic, I had to admit. I choose not to play any rear guards. I do check a heal trigger. And then he rides the Legend, does Counter Boss 1, Soul Boss 1 for top 5. For Flame Dragon, he gets a PG and strides into Vortex Dragonute. We no guard Vortex Dragonute. He uses a skill, which on hit destroys some of our rear guards, which we don't have rear guards, so we don't care. Then we stride, and we make him attack his Vanguard with the flame thing that's on his rear guard circle. We use more Shige skill to rest the unit. He gives 3k to one of his. We give 10,000 to one of ours. We use Mugen Timbu to make him attack Vanguard. He no guards. And he no guards our Vanguard attack but blocks the dominated rear guarded attack. Then we attack him and he denial Griffin, so we shove our grade 1 into our soul. And yeah, we call it a wrap. So we no guard his Ziegenberg. We get a heal trigger giving power, and then we PG the second one. He doesn't get any triggers, so he's not able to hit me. Then I make him call Spiritual Lord Dragon from the drop zone to the field. He calls over his current grade 2. And then we go into Mugen Lord here. We make him attack his Vanguard with the on-stride ability, and then we use Mugen Lord's skill to dominate it and make him attack his Vanguard. He guards with 2 cards, and then he PGs our Vanguard attack. We get a draw trigger, put the power on rear guard, and then he denial Griffins again. So this time he's going to Ziegenberg again. We have 2 PGs in our hand, so we're not worried about it at all. He does heal 1 damage off. So I make him call Lava Flow to the field. He calls it over his crit. We go into Moo Crow. And then we use Moo Crow's skill to make his Vanguard attack his field. And we do our skills first of when our dominated unit attacks. We check 1, check a heal, check 2, check a PG. And then we attack with Vanguard for 43. He does no guard. We check a draw trigger and nothing else. And then we attack him for 16, and he D-guards again with Vanguard Dragon. Then he draws strides. Is using another Ziegenberg. This time he does check a crit and a draw trigger. So we do take 2 damage, and then we PG his final attack, and then we G-guard his Nahalem on the rear guard circle. So this time we make him use Oboro's skill to call Spiritual Lord. We go into our GB8. We make the GB8 attack him. And instead of like following through with the skill, he just checks the top card of his deck for a damage and literally just concedes the game because he would not be able to survive through Roku Shika Khan or whatever its name. I should just call it Fire Lord Roku or Avatar Roku. It's literally the Avatar. that's what we're calling it now. Avatar Roku. But yeah, going into Shiranui game 2, looks like we're playing against Claret Sword for the second game. Our opponent rides, we call, we attack. We don't have a Shiranui in our hand, which really sucks. Our opponent attacks us for 13, we no guard. And then we ride and bind one with Tamagane Metsu. We do draw a Strife Otter, so we're able to search out our Shiranui, but then we check another Shiranui, which is kind of funny. But then we attack with rear guard, he guards, then he attacks into our rear guard, which we don't really particularly care about. But then he doesn't attack into our Vanguard so that we can't Sibreeze him. And we have 2 crits, so we're able to just go on the assault anyways. We put him to 4 damage. I'm not quite sure why he didn't just ride to grade 3. It doesn't seem like a very smart opinion or smart option on his part, in my opinion, because he could have been, you know, just already ahead and doing things. The damage that he could have taken could have been on my stride turn. So I don't know. I could effectively G-guard and be at the same place that he didn't want me to be. So it's just kind of a little bit ridiculous in my opinion. However, he is doing all his Cleric Sword skills. He did use his Stride skill to call grade 1 and get draw 1 off of the Swordbreaker. So we choose to dominate on Stride, and we dominate Morian Sphere, giving 3k and then 4k, and then so 16 attacks his Vanguard. He guards with a 10k, and then we play our cards down to the board, and then we use Mugen Timbu, counter boss 1, flip, and then we make him attack his Vanguard for 19. He decides to take this one. Then we attack him for 33. We check 3 cards. They are all not triggers, and then we attack his rear guard since we can't hit. And then at the end of the turn, we use our grade 1 to shove it into the soul, countercharge 1. This time he goes into Orgeyser Doomed. And then I was telling him they missed a card to return, so he did return a card to his deck. And then he plays a Sur and uses a Doom skill to retire 2, or AK 3 because of the stand trigger. He does check 2, and we do retire 2. I was checking to see here if he drew an extra card, but he actually didn't draw an extra card. He just put back the card that he would have drawn from Revolt or whatever, and then shuffled and drew a new card because it wasn't what it was supposed to be. So he does use Doom and check a Night Sky Eagle and Belial Owl, which I'm not really sure why he is running Belial Owl in a Cleric Sword build, because Belial Owl won't really work even if he goes into Dragstrider. I thought he was running like a Cleric Sword / Lord build, which I have seen some of those floating around, but this doesn't seem to be that. The more and more I look at the cards, I see like actual Cleric Swords in there and stuff like that. So I think my opponent just didn't know that if you go into like any kind of Luard Stride, you can't Belial Owl at the end of the turn. So he plays a Grosney and Night Sky Eagle. Also opts to play Belial Owl. He attacks for 15. Then he attacks for 32. We PG. He does check a heal trigger, healing down, then a crit and another crit. To which I was like, oh my gosh, what the hell is going on? So we go Horicon, and yeah, we place the card on the guard circle, and then he quickly puts it to his drop zone. And I was like a little bit internally tilted because it bugs the game on area whenever you and your opponent put cards on the guard circle at the same time and then try to put it to the drop zone. It puts whatever cards were in the drop zone automatically to your or to your drop zone or to your G zone. So as you guys can see in his G zone, or you guys can't see it because my camera's blocking it, but he has like a Horicon like face up in his G zone because he sent it to the G zone. I guess didn't know about the glitch, so we use Moo Crow skill to get us 2 cards, and then we decide to attack into him for 11. He takes this one, we attack into him for 38. He PGs, we do check a healing down 1, and then we attack for 18. He takes that one as well, and then he strides into another Cleric Sword Helheim. He checks the top until he has 2 grade 1s, calls a Swift Owl, and then adds brand 1 to hand. He soul lost 1 for the Swift Owl to make it 14, and then he calls it with the crit trigger, so we guard the crit trigger skill. Then he attacks Vanguard, we no guard. He checks a stand trigger, and 2 more Fessas, so we take it. He uses the skill of Helheim. And so he was supposed to flip. I'm not sure if he ended up doing that or not. He never flipped the Helheim. I think he thought that it was flip anything because he has 2 Orgeizers face up in his G zone. So, but we use Obero's skill to make him call more Fessa to the board because I thought that would be interesting. But I kind of forgot about Cleric Sword Revolt's G-BT12 because that kind of screwed my hopes of Mugen Lording him effectively. So yeah, so what he was able to do is he was just able to double intercept, 1 using the skill and 2 using the other one. So he used Mugen Lord to give power to our units, all of our units, and then give power to his unit and dominate, attack the Vanguard. So he like infinite bugged the guard circle at this point, which is why he's just going to keep us stand on the field for the rest of the game. I was surprised that it didn't give us the bug error and make us quit, because usually when someone does this to me, it gives the bug error and just quits the game automatically, so that's unfortunate. So to return our G-guards back to the G zone, we had to stride them and then act like we're ending our turn. So he goes into Drag Strider here. I'm not too scared. I have 2 G-Guardians in my hand, so he goes into Drag Strider. So we G-Guard number 1 with Abudaishi, and then we G-Guard number 2 with Shigehime. We ask him if he's discarding a card, and he would have to discard that heal, so he says no discard, so it's a no pass. He does his quadruple drive, and he gets a heal and a stand trigger, nothing else. Then he tries to use Belly Owl skill. I was trying to explain to him how he could not actually do that. Like I was explaining earlier, this was the reason that my opponent surmised that he could use it. Basically the reason that he can't use it is because at the start of the end phase, you would return your stride, and then all the end of phase or end of turn abilities will activate. So basically he would de-stride Luard, and then Belly Owl would proc. So I'm explaining this to him, taking time to explain this to him. So the 3 things that happen before anything else in the main phase is unlock, undelete, and your stride goes back to the G zone. So just keep that in mind for future endeavors, guys. Might be helpful to you. I do use Shiranui skill to make him call Revolt to the field. He calls Revolt over Morfessa. We stride into our GB8. We use Shiranui to attack the Vanguard. He does check a stand trigger, and then we play 2 units to boost our cards, knowing that he won't be able to guard it. So we attack him with 16. He G-guards and into Bronarch, and then he has to call 1, like all ones to the Guardian Circle, so he just decks out because the last card in his deck is a Belly Owl. So I'm not even sure why he did that, but yeah, I guess he wasn't going to survive anyway, so it wasn't really like a big deal per se. But yeah, he just wasn't gonna survive, so yeah. So yeah, we won 2 games so far, and then we're going into Shiranui game 3 here, and we are playing against Maelstrom, looks like. So we ride, we call so that we can search our Shiranui, we discard one of our 10Ks. He attacks us for 11, we no guard. Then we ride our 10K and call Genkai, which I was kind of scared about doing because I didn't want him to just attack into our rear guard willy-nilly. Sure enough, he does ride a 10K of his own, attack into our rear guard, which we let go. And then he attacks us for 14, which we could have like no guarded and no passed him, but he got a trigger, so he did pass the attack. But we attack with Metsu, we attack with Vanguard, we get a critical. He takes 2 damage, getting a draw trigger. And then we attack him for 22, he guards with the card. Then he rides Maelstrom, strides into Disaster Maelstrom, uses the skill of Eldamos to be able to attack from the back row, which is pretty cool, but also pretty ridiculous. So he's attacking with Disaster Maelstrom right now for 36, using the skill to search out a Maelstrom and stuff like that. He does check a heal going down in damage yet again, which I was kind of sad about, but yeah. Then he does attack us, we do take an attack, and that's the last attack that we take in the turn. I don't know why, but I think he forgot to attack with Eldamos or something like that, because we didn't check any triggers, in my opinion, or in my opinion. We didn't check any triggers to my knowledge, so I might have just missed it because it's going too fast. But yeah, we're currently using Shiranui on stride skill with Madoi to make his Magnum Assault attack him. as we've deemed as his most important unit on the board. So we use Mugen Timbu to dominate it again and attack into Vanguard, and then at the end of the attack it will retire. So he does take the second damage as well. And it's times like these where I wish I had a Mugen Lord, but we do attack him for 17, and then we attack him for 26, and he G-guards for 2 to pass. I do consider going for the all Vanguard approach because I do not know what's in his hand, but we do check only a draw trigger, so I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. So then we attack him for 33, and he G-guards with Ionis, using Ionis skill to choose all of his rear guards to get resist, and he gets 5k per each one chosen, so it's a definite no pass. Then he just rides Lordly Maelstrom, the new Strider Maelstrom that they have. He strides with the Maelstrom. It gets kind of like weird for a second here because he goes into an Engulf Maelstrom, and I look at my hand and I just go, well, I'm screwed, because he has 2 Maelstroms and a Soul, and then he would have, on the Stride skill, gone into 1 more. But then he decides to change it out with Disaster Maelstrom, and I was like, why are you being so bad? But he uses Disaster Maelstrom skill, Surge Out of Maelstrom, when it attacks, and you just PG it. But we wouldn't have been able to guard the attack, and it would have had a crit if he would have gone into the second Maelstrom Stride. So I'm kind of like just always going to be internally wondering why he didn't do that. It's just like in every way a stronger play. It's like one of those situations where you know that you're probably going to die the next turn anyways, so if you have it, you have it, and you should go for it. We use Shiranui's skill to dominate Eldamos because it's the grade 2 on the field. We don't want him intercepting with cards, so we do attack the Vanguard with Eldamos. Then we play our Mei skill. Then we use Mugen Lord to counter boss 1, and we dominate 3 units. They all get plus 4k. And then we use Mei's skill to shove a card into the soul, give it plus 5,000 just so it can be an attacker. Then we attack 11 into Vanguard, then 11 into Vanguard, and then 18 into Vanguard, and he guards. Then we attack 17 into Vanguard, he guards with 2 5ks, he no guards our Vanguard. And we check 3 vanillas, to which I was like, please don't 6 damage heal, but then he 6 damage healed. But then we attacked him with another big number at 31, and I guess he couldn't guard it, but then he showed me that he had a heal trigger in his hand, so he could guard it. I don't know, this game was very confusing. But I don't know if he let us have the game. I should say he let us have the game. So technically, let's say that we lost 1 time, because he should have went into Engulf Maelstrom and just literally obliterated me. But yeah, guys, that has been the Shiranui Domination FutureFight. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to subscribe. It helps a lot, and we're building the community here, making Cardfight Empire great again, even though it was never not great. But yeah, so make sure to just subscribe, guys. Leave a like and comment down below, letting me know what you thought of the video, and check out our social medias, be that Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, and Discord. You can get to our Discord from the Patreon. For those of you who support me on Patreon, thank you so much. You guys are so awesome. With that being said, this has been Josh from Cardfight Empire, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace, guys.